There we go. Now it's recording. Okay. I guess I paused my last video and didn't realize it, so there's quite a bit of information people missed out on. Polaris Diesels. These are great little machines if you're willing to work on them and you're willing to put up with having to source hard to find parts if you need them. But this is generally what they're made for. It's a low speed work machine. That's probably one of the heavier loads I put on it. It moves that in low range, no problem. I was cruising at 10 miles an hour, no problem in low range. High range, it really didn't want to move that well. I had to be at least half throttle to keep it moving. So, yeah, definitely a low range machine. These diesels were only 8 to 10 horsepower. Yeah, not a lot. I feel like most people wouldn't put up with that, but if you just have some property, or like those trees over there, they got some paths in there me and my friends made. Works great for doing stuff like that, just going and getting wood or whatever. I do use it for mowing a majority of this. There's a whole field on the other side, all that. Works great. Good fuel economy. It doesn't produce a lot of torque. People think that diesels inherently are torquey. Yeah, generally they produce more torque than horsepower, but naturally aspirated diesels like this one don't produce much torque. The 4-strokes definitely put out more torque than this did. Even the 400 Sportsman we have, the 2002, that thing just creams this thing in power. It's not even close. That being said, though, this thing has got a tremendous amount of gear reduction in the gear case. So I looked it up. It has more gear reduction than a brand new 850 high lifter or 1000 high lifter. Because of that, high range is about 30 miles an hour on a paved surface, 28 on gravel. That's just like pegged, maxed out, as fast as it'll go. On pavement, you might be able to get up to 32 if your alignment's good, your tire pressures are a little higher. Downhill, you can kind of get up to 38. If you're trying to climb a hill on high range, if it's anything steep, you're looking at like 10 miles an hour, 13 miles an hour. You might as well be in low range because that's the top speed of low range at that point. Okay. Some things that are kind of unique about this machine. It is a Polaris worker underneath. Now, you really never see those for sale either. I don't think they took off very much. They had a different gear case in them. A little bit heavier shocks. I have these, a little bit heavier springs. I have these springs turned up a little bit right now because these big loads like this, you can see it is sunk a little bit, but we're pretty much at this machine's rated capacity, I think. So I think it was rated at like 1,000 to 1,500, somewhere in there. That's why it has the extra gear reduction. They had a worker 335, a worker 500. I'm not sure if they had any others. But if you're looking for parts that are not motor, typically you can find them from a worker. You know, if you really wanted to take a Sportsman gear case and stuff it in there, you could probably get a little more speed out of it, but I wouldn't even bother. It doesn't really have the power. So it does have a bigger stator, which is nice. I think it's with like 300 watts or 350 watts, something like that. The gas motors at this time are around 175 to 200. So if you're somebody who plows snow and you have somewhere to keep it indoors and warm, that's great. I would definitely recommend it. It is a little heavier than the Sportsman, so that helps out with traction in the snow. It has dual batteries. That is a ETX 30L, and that is an ETX 15L, so this one's literally double the size. So it's basically like having 3 of the standard batteries in it. You kind of need it. This does not have a pull start. Obvious reasons. That's a lot of compression. You'd wreck your shoulder trying to start that. So any guys who are looking to upgrade their 4-stroke machine, you'd probably lose this underseat storage, but if you went and found a battery mount for a diesel, there you go. You'd add the battery, or maybe you just want to delete the one in the wheel well, and believe me, this battery would be more than enough to start a 4-stroke machine. It's 400 cranking amps versus that 220. Okay, so some other special features about this machine. Most of these machines came with glow plugs, and I don't think you can see it. If you follow that intake down, they're stuck in almost like a grid heater right at the entrance to the intake valve. And all I did was hook them up to an external Ford starter relay. I found this button online, I want to say somewhere in Australia. It's wired up with the key. Turn the key on. Hear the relay come on. It glows red whenever you're holding it down and the glow plugs are engaged. I really don't use them, to be honest with you. They draw down the battery so much you don't really get a lot of cranking speed if you're using them, which is unfortunate. If you put a jumper pack on this, or you jump start with something else, yeah, go ahead, use the glow plugs. There's a decompression lever up under here, which I use more frequently. I'll just flip the key on. I'll let that thing just turn over as fast as it can go with that decompression open. And as soon as I think it's got enough fuel built up in there, enough engine speed, I just let the decompression go. It usually pops off and goes. I've had this thing running at like 6 degrees before. I don't know if I'd run it at a temperature much lower than that unless it was inside and warm first. Just because this motor just doesn't build heat, which is a plus and a minus for it. All aluminum, cylinder, case, just like the Sportsman's. In fact, this thing has a 500 gasser connecting rod in it. Same part number. The mag side of the crankshaft, or I should call the stator side of it, is its own unique part number because it's its own stator. But the PTO side, or here where the drive clutch is at, is actually the same part number as a 500 Sportsman. So it's got the same bore as a 425 or a 400, depending on. In Polaris vernacular, if it's a 425, like if you have a Magnum 425, that was actually a 2-valve 425. If they call it a 400, that is a 4-valve 425. I think they did that just not to confuse people. I think the 2 valves are probably torqueier. I know the 4-valve actually produces plenty of torque. We've got a Sportsman with that motor in it. But anyways, same bore. It's a totally unique piston because it's 4 diesel. But yeah, it's kind of a Frankenstein diesel injection, diesel piston on a 500 425 combo, which is why it doesn't have much power. But it's all aluminum. It dissipates heat really well. On top of that, Polaris has these external tanks, which also dissipate heat. So when you're riding this for extended periods of time, low speeds, like you're pulling a brush mower or something, you don't have that fan constantly blowing hot air on you from the radiator up front, which is nice. Okay, speaking of that external tank, if you buy one of these machines, first thing you do, remove that tank and clean the bottom of it out really well. When I bought this machine, it would start, wouldn't stay running, and eventually it wouldn't start at all while I was trying to diagnose what was going on. I originally thought it was a kill switch issue. It would kind of start if you held the throttle, and then it would die if you let off of it. Well, ended up being the bottom of that tank was clogged up. The screen was that feeds the oil pump, and it was getting enough oil flow that it didn't damage anything that's directly lubricated, like the cam bearings and crank bearings and stuff. But it didn't have enough flow to build pressure for the oil squirters that lubricate the piston, so the piston got wiped. I was able to get some pistons made for it. It was cleaned up on a 30 thousandths bore. And I say I got pistons made for it because there's no pistons available for these machines anymore. I looked. I contacted places in Europe that said they were available. They get back to me and nope, that's actually not in our system. All over the US too. Nothing. There's still some gaskets out there, head gaskets, base gaskets and stuff, but there's no pistons available. I sold a couple of them, so that kind of offset the cost. The company had a minimum of 4 he had to make. I'm keeping the others a spare for right now. So keep up on your oil changes and make sure that tank is cleaned out really well when you first get it. All right, something unique about this. Dual sensing EBS. Dual sensing. God, you really don't hear about this system anymore. I think Polaris only used it for a couple years, maybe 3 model years, maybe 98. I've only ever really seen 99s and 2000s with it. I have seen Sportsmans, if you Google it, that have it. This is the first one I've seen in person, though, is this diesel. It is a nice system. You know, they have a one-way bearing in this drive clutch that keeps the motor engaged. when you let off the throttle, it slows you down. Engine braking system, EBS. This one, it's nice, gradual, it's not overly aggressive, like maybe the new 570s are. Heard that complaint from some people that the 570 is really aggressive. My buddy's General, I was just driving the other day, way too aggressive on the engine braking if you ask me. This one's nice, gradual, until it drops below 5 miles an hour. And I feel like that's where the dual sensing comes in. It gets below 5 miles an hour and it slams in. And if you're not ready for it, or you're not on the throttle a little bit at that point, it'll kind of lurch forward on you. If you're on really loose, dry gravel, the rear tires might skid a little even when it first engages. If you're used to it like I am, I really like it. It'll slow that load of wood down pretty easily, okay? So you barely have to use the brakes on this machine. When I first bought this is the winch that was on it. They literally, I can't make this up. They had it bolted down here with one bolt by that front skid, and then they used some RCA cable to tie it off up here to keep the other side up. Yeah, so I welded a piece of C-channel onto the bumper, drilled a couple holes in it, and called it good. So this is my 99 Polaris Diesel. The later 2000s, I quit adding glow plugs. So if you're looking for one with glow plugs already in it, probably look for 99 or early 2000s. Nice, heavy little machine. Gets the job done. Really fuel efficient. I put fuel in it once last year and once this year. The 2 years I've had it running and I've owned it. So yeah, and I've put I don't know how many hours on it. I've put like 200 miles on it. It is actually a little over 2,000 because there was a couple weeks there the speedometer key drive broke in it where it wasn't reading. I know I put at least 20 miles on it in those couple weeks. So, and I don't know, probably close to 40 or 50 hours on this machine. So 8 gallons of fuel for that many miles and hours, I can't complain about it, particularly right now with fuel prices the way they are. So if you have any questions about these machines, you can drop a comment below, let me know. Maybe I'll make another video explaining some other things for it, but that's kind of the unique, cool features, what you can expect owning one of these. Have a good day.